Alexa, tell me the news.
Sir, sorry to disturb you.
Oh yes, I'm just reading a COVID brief. What is the latest on my theory about Chicken Cottage being the origination of COVID?
Very good theory, sir. I spoke to the PM and he very much agrees.
Very good, very good.
Sir, I've just made contact with the subject. 27-year-old Pakistani male, 6'1", but his Tinder profile claims 6'2".
Untrustworthy. What's the visa status?
Very dubious, sir. Student.
They always come in this way. The recent searches?
How to snipe better on Halo 3.
I want you to prepare for a full brief.
Sir, he recently asked Amazon Alexa about the news. Do you think he's already acted?
Hard to say. Any known affiliations?
Just one, sir. Arsenal F.C.
They're quite vicious, aren't they?
Correct, sir. They were very dangerous in 2003, 2004, but now I believe their threat level is overrated. Sir, his Fitbit data shows that he's been walking more than usual.
Do you think he's surveying his target?
Indeed, sir. Permission to notify heads of state?
Yes. You go on and do that. I'm gonna finish this brief. Yes.
Very good, sir.
Do you ever feel like someone is watching you? Someone's listening to you? Every move that you make is being recorded somewhere, being processed, and being used to manipulate you and take advantage of your civil liberties and information. In this video, I'm going to give you an overview of AI and surveillance by looking at 3 different areas on how this technology is used: smart cities, facial recognition, and smart policing. The contents of this video have been adapted by a report published by Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. The report is called The Global Expansion for AI Surveillance. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where we sift through the noise to bring you content that affects our day-to-day lives just to make you a little bit more informed and productive. I'm Ahmed, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing so you can stay up to date on the new content that I put out. The growth of AI has really fueled the growth of surveillance around the world, not only making it easier, but in fact more effective as well. In this video, I'm going to be talking about who is using AI in surveillance, where are they getting this technology from, and how they are using it. I'll also be talking about the quality of this technology, where its strengths are, and where it fails. In the Carnegie report, they look at 176 countries across the world and find that 75 of them are using AI for surveillance. 56 of these 75 countries are using AI in surveillance for smart cities, 64 of them are using it for facial recognition, and 52 are using it for smart policing. Furthermore, China is providing AI for 63 of the 75 countries using AI for surveillance. An even more shocking statistic is that of the 63 countries using Chinese AI technology, 50 of them are using Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications company. The second most popular company providing AI and surveillance technology is NEC. However, US-based companies Palantir, Cisco, and IBM are not far behind. If you're interested in finding out what countries are using AI in surveillance, then you can look at the Carnegie's AI Global Surveillance Index, or the AIGS, which gives you the names of all the countries that are using this technology, how they're using it, and where they're getting this technology from. One of the main messages of the report is that democracies are not doing enough to control and monitor the spread of this technology. Personally, I find that statement quite problematic because it's not only authoritarian regimes, but also democracies that are using this technology to illegally watch over their citizens. In fact, according to their own report, 51% of advanced democracies use AI and surveillance on their citizens. 37% of autocratic states use AI and surveillance. I will, however, say that just because people are using AI and technology for surveillance doesn't necessarily mean they're abusing it. But I think it is important to understand how that technology is used so we do understand when an abuse is occurring. Countries including China, Russia, Saudi Arabia are all using AI for mass surveillance purposes, but they're not the only countries. In fact, it was reported in Haaretz, an Israeli newspaper, that an Israeli company named Anyvision was mass surveilling Palestinians in the West Bank using its facial recognition technology. Subsequently, Microsoft, that had a minority stake in Anyvision, sold its shares because it felt that its technology was being misused and impinging on people's democratic freedoms. Another example of AI surveillance was conducted in Baltimore in 2018. During this period, drones were flying over the city every single day for at least 10 or 11 hours, taking photos every second. These photos were then used for facial recognition purposes to identify protesters during the 2018 riots. The report states that it's unclear whether the use of this AI surveillance technology is covered within US law, let alone whether these actions meet the necessity and proportionality standard. Whether or not a country deploys AI surveillance or not doesn't necessarily depend on whether they're democratic or an authoritarian regime. What's more clear, according to the report, is that there's a high correlation between military spending and use of AI and surveillance. One of the biggest fears about surveillance is that with technological advancements, scale and duration are no longer limits for the state when they're conducting surveillance. Furthermore, with the declining cost of technology, more and more states have the ability to have AI and surveillance in their country. Because of the advancement of technology, our cities have become massive data centers. From our cell phones to the Wi-Fi that we connect to on the train, to the train signals themselves, all create data that can be used to help organize a city. For example, knowing traffic flows can help hospitals route ambulances to the best possible route to reach their destination. Similar data about traffic can also be used to design new roads to reduce traffic flow and to simulate how it might respond to the overall dynamics of the city. However, there is a little bit of concern that certain types of technology are producing more harm than good. Particularly, they're referring to things like facial recognition. I know that's a second topic that we're going to discuss, but it does still apply to smart cities. Because of the striking increase in the number of CCTV cameras in various cities, there is a little bit of a concern that people feel like they're being watched all the time. However, just the increase of CCTV cameras isn't necessarily a bad thing on its own, but one can only assume that with the drastic increase of CCTV cameras, they're probably coupling it with AI technology. You can't imagine that they're going to be hiring hundreds of new people to start watching screens. This is where the challenges are, and it leads us very promptly into our second point, facial recognition. So when you have a city that's got a drastic increase of CCTV cameras, it's most likely that they're also installing AI technology. Particularly, they're looking at facial recognition. Facial recognition is a technology that takes live footage and matches it with footage that they have in a database. This allows people to de-anonymize individuals on live cameras. I'm not going to say that all usages of facial recognition are bad. For example, we use them on our phones. Facial recognition has also resulted in the rise of digital banks, which now allow us to validate our identity using our faces. So there are definitely good uses of facial recognition. However, the problem becomes when you don't understand how this technology works. Simply put, modern facial recognition software use deep learning algorithms like convolutional neural networks. What the facial recognition algorithm does is that it creates a representation of your face. Technically speaking, that representation is a vector of numbers. Those numbers are like the DNA of your face. However, the challenge with facial recognition is that it works very differently in different lightings, different angles, and there's a lot of challenges. In fact, it was found that facial recognition algorithms work far less accurately when trying to recognize Black people or ethnic minorities or even women. My personal prediction is that it's probably due to the training set. Training data that the algorithms were trained on were probably white and male. However, when testing it with different skin colors and different types of features, that accuracy plummets. This is a big problem because this technology is being widely used. Question marks rise when you start incorrectly blaming individuals for being perpetrators when they're in fact completely innocent. Therefore, the use of facial recognition algorithms in certain types of use cases is in fact incredibly problematic. Number 3 on the list is smart policing. This, in my opinion, is the most controversial use of AI surveillance. The main idea behind smart policing is that by using historical crime data, you can use to predict future crime data. You can use that data to then figure out how to allocate your patrol, how to allocate resources. But the thing that gets me here is that in the report, they specifically mention that this technology is sometimes used to predict where a crime will happen and who will commit it. This kind of reminds me of the Minority Report with Tom Cruise. However, if you refer to my first and second videos about AI and AI in fashion, you will note that it's incredibly hard to predict the future. In fact, it's impossible. So therefore, to state that you can very likely predict where a crime is going to happen and who's going to commit it is quite scary and problematic. In fact, in my opinion, I would go as far as saying it's a gross misunderstanding of how this technology should be used. I understand the notion that you can statistically look at where different crimes have occurred to predict how likely they are to occur in that area again. That's all mathematical and makes complete sense. However, how you use that data and how you act on it is a very different question, especially when it comes to certain individuals. In one statement in the report, it states that by using predictive technology to figure out where crimes are going to be committed, you're simply perpetuating an already existing bias. One example of this technology is called predpol. This technology has been implemented in more than 60 departments across the United States. There is a lot of controversy around predpol and its technology. In fact, researchers state that its effectiveness has not been proven. One of the big issues about using algorithms to predict anything is bias, specifically around training data. As far as I can tell, predpol is using a supervised machine learning model. Let's say we're taking crime data, whether it's police callouts, arrests, or actual crimes. Each of these events will be recorded on some list by some police officer. This data set in itself already inherently contains bias, the bias of our society. So just looking at historical data of where crimes have occurred, what arrests have been made, and maybe what callouts the police has done, it's very difficult to conclude that this data is in fact not biased. However, CEO of predpol, Brian McDonald, claims that his algorithm is in fact completely unbiased. In my opinion, that just shows a gross misunderstanding of how these algorithms really work. They talk about their datasets being completely anonymous and therefore not racially biased. However, even if you remove the ethnicity or the name of the individuals on the dataset, looking at the location, you'll probably be able to figure out what that individual's ethnicity is, and therefore racial bias is not removed from the models. I believe that the use of AI surveillance and AI algorithms in smart policing is incredibly problematic. That's primarily due to the fact that most people don't even know that it's being done. And even if they do know it's being done, for example, police officers, they're not fully aware about how these algorithms really work. This just perpetuates the racial issues that we have in our society and creating a bigger and bigger problem. However, while previously it was done by individuals, now it's under the guise of technology. And technology cannot be biased. Yes, explicitly technology can't be biased, but technology can perpetuate human bias. This video is not intended on making you an expert in AI or an expert in surveillance. However, I hope it does create awareness about what AI surveillance is, where it's being used, and how it's being used. In the meantime, make sure you're covering your webcams and muting your Alexa. Till next time.